Good morning. I'm Deborah Bogar, facilitator for this one-hour NACD Urban and Community Conservation webinar on stormwater management. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on NACD's website along with a presentation PDF for your future access. Everyone should be connected online to see the presentations, and you can access audio via your computer or by phone. Those directions were sent with your confirmation email. As this opening slide indicates, all lines are muted except for the speakers. I'll open the chat area after the presentations so you can type in your questions and comments, and we'll take as many as we can. You might want to jot those down during the presentations. In this webinar system, the transitions will take a few seconds as the slides load, so don't worry that it's your computer. In fact, with the heavy use of Adobe Connect and various programs like this, we're finding things are taking a bit longer than usual. We'll start with comments from our host, Ron Rohal, Chair of NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, which is a subcommittee of our Natural Resources Policy Committee. Ron?
And good morning, and I welcome all of you to the monthly Urban and Community Conservation webinars offered by the National Association of Conservation Districts through the support of our sole sponsor, the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company. These sessions are designed by NACD's Urban and Community Resource Policy Group, a subdivision of district officials and partners charged with guiding the association's services and support for districts' work in developed and developing areas. Our goal through these webinars is to help districts share what they are doing nationwide, enable them to learn from each other and various agencies and organizations. And we appreciate the support of the Scotts Miracle-Gro Company for making them possible. I invite you to let us know what you think about each webinar and what other topics you would like us to cover by contacting NACD staffer Deb Bogar. And please tell our NACD officers what type of assistance you would like from your national association for your urban and community resource conservation work. Now I will hand it over to Deb for the introduction of our speakers.
All right. We have two presentations planned, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce both of our speakers. One has not been able to join us yet, but we'll keep our fingers crossed that he can in a little bit. And if not, that's fine. We'll do the one great presentation and then move on to the questions from there. So today, Andrea Buxton, who is the Stormwater Program Manager for the Tahoe RCD in California, will talk about their program. Andrea has worked in stormwater research and management in the Tahoe Basin for 19 years. She has extensive experience in water quality monitoring, data management, data analysis, project management, and collaborative project execution. As the Stormwater Program Manager, she manages staff and large grant contracts from federal, state, and local sources, writes technical reports, manages budgets, provides project and program oversight and administration, and coordinates with partners. And if Derek is able to join us, he is a professional engineer for the Snohomish Conservation District in the state of Washington. Derek works with all the district teams, though specializes in green stormwater infrastructure and works closest with the community conservation team. Derek has designed nearly 1,000 rain gardens and rainwater harvesting systems within Snohomish County and Camano, as well as many other systems in the Puget Sound region. He has 14 years of engineering experience and 10 years with the district. Derek graduated with a degree in civil engineering from the University of Ohio. With that, Amanda, I'm going to load your slides. When they come up on your screen, you can just go ahead and take it from there.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Buxton, and as Deb said, I am the Stormwater Program Manager at the Tahoe Resource Conservation District. I've been working in the field of stormwater in the Tahoe Basin for the last 19 years, so I have seen a lot of dirty runoff, but I'm so fortunate to live in a place where our lake still looks very clean, and that is due in part to the efforts of all the agencies around the lake that work to protect this jewel of the Sierra, as John Muir once put it so poetically. So today I'm going to talk about how agencies in the Tahoe Basin have collaborated to effectively manage stormwater and the part that the Tahoe RCD has played in that effort. Sorry, I have to see. There we go.
There you go.
So Lake Tahoe is known for its exceptionally clear blue waters. One researcher at the University of California, Davis, Dr. Charles Goldman, was so impressed by the clarity of the lake that he began taking lake clarity measurements in 1968. In 1968, you could see to a depth of 102 feet. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Lake Tahoe, but I think you would be really impressed as well. Lake Tahoe is really unique because of its size. It's 22 miles long and 12 miles across. Its depth, at a maximum depth of 1,645 feet, it's the second deepest lake in the U.S. and the 16th deepest in the world. And its extraordinary clarity, it was designated an outstanding national resource water under the Clean Water Act of 1972. This is the highest designation a water body can get, and it prohibits any degradation of the water quality. Unfortunately, with increased urbanization over the last 50 years, clarity has decreased to an average of 65 feet, so it's lost almost half its clarity. This is a chart of average yearly clarity measurements from 1968 to 2018. A black and white disc, called a Secchi disc, is lowered into the lake until it can no longer be seen with the human eye. You'd be surprised to know that in the last 50 years, there have only been 3 different people that have done these measurements, and they've all been from UC Davis. This is to keep the variability to a minimum for a measurement that depends on the subjective human eye. So you can see that the very first measurement in 1968 was 31 meters or 102 feet. So average clarity measurements have bounced up and down a bit over the years. The trend is going up, which means that the Secchi disc can only be seen at depths closer and closer to the surface of the lake. In 2017, the average clarity measurement was only 60 feet. We did have a lot of precipitation and a lot of runoff bringing dirty water to the lake that year. So fortunately, clarity bounced back a bit in 2018 to about 70 feet. But the unfortunate truth is that clarity has been declining rapidly over the last 50 years to a 5-year average of about 65 feet. Sorry, it takes me a second to change the slides. Because Lake Tahoe is designated an outstanding national resource water and is therefore allowed no degradation, we were required to develop a total maximum daily load, or TMDL, to reverse the decline in lake clarity. In the early 2000s, researchers investigated the reasons for the clarity loss and discovered that the primary reason was increased input of fine sediment particles to the lake. So these fine sediment particles are less than the width of a human hair, and because they're so small, gravity cannot pull them out of the water column. So instead, they stay suspended, scatter the light, and results in a cloudiness, or in other words, a loss in clarity. It was also discovered that 72% of the fine sediment particles, or SSP, I'm going to use SSP from now on, that's what we call it, fine sediment particles, originated in the urban environment. So a TMDL was established for FSP, and all the jurisdictions around the lake were issued a permit to comply with this TMDL. The TMDL is a 65-year plan to restore lake clarity levels to what they were in 1968, which was 100-ish feet. So the primary mode of transport of FSP to the lake is through stormwater runoff off the urban environment. These are pipes, there are pipes like this one here. Wait, actually, let me get out the little arrow. So there are pipes like this one in this picture right here that take stormwater directly from the highways or the other roads and dump it straight into the lake. And you can see how dirty this water is. There's no filtration treatment of this particular pipe at all. In the middle picture here are bottles of stormwater runoff taken during precipitation events, and you can see how some are really dirty and then some are pretty clean. And then in this picture on the right here is a graduated cylinder of some pretty dirty stormwater. So this stormwater is full of FSP that has caused the loss of lake clarity. There are 7 jurisdictions around the lake that are required to comply with permits to implement the TMDL. So Lake Tahoe is roughly divided down the middle by the California-Nevada border here. So we're dealing with coordinating 4 counties, 1 city, and 2 departments of transportation in 2 different states. So we have Placer County up here, we have El Dorado County, we have the city of South Lake Tahoe, and we have the California Department of Transportation on the California side. And then we have Washoe County, Douglas County, and the Nevada Department of Transportation on the Nevada side that are all responsible for implementing stormwater capture and treatment projects to reduce the amount of FSP entering the lake. We also have to contend with 2 regulatory agencies, 1 in each state, the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board, which is a regional office of the California State Water Resources Control Board, and the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection. Fortunately, the 2 states lined up their permit requirements, so at least we don't have to deal with 2 different sets of requirements. First, so where does Tahoe RCD come into all of this? So we run the Regional Stormwater Monitoring Program, or RSWMP, and a regional stormwater monitoring program was encouraged by the California and Nevada regulatory agencies for several reasons. So first, all the stormwater runoff from all the 7 jurisdictions goes to one place. It all flows into the lake. We live in a giant bowl surrounded by mountains, so all the precipitation and all the runoff eventually ends up in the same place, which is Lake Tahoe. And this photo shows the lake encircled with mountains, so you can get the idea that we live in a giant basin. Second, permits for all 7 jurisdictions require that stormwater is monitored to show that improvements made in the urban catchments are actually resulting in FSP load reductions. So urban catchments is what we call watersheds in the urban area. They're affected not only by the topography, but also by the drainage infrastructure. And then when I say improvements, I mean the implementation of projects to capture and or treat stormwater. Lastly, collaboration between all 7 jurisdictions results in more efficient monitoring. Not only is it cheaper to have one program that ensures that everyone is complying with their permits, it also ensures that the data is collected and analyzed consistently and can be compared across jurisdictions from year to year. So this is a map of the Tahoe Basin. Again, currently we have 11 active stormwater runoff monitoring sites and 7 meteorological stations. You can see, where's my arrow? Here we go. You can see that we have monitoring locations roughly distributed around the whole lake. This east shore side of the lake is really, really steep and has comparatively little urbanization, so we don't have anything on that side of the lake. And I live up here on the North Shore in Tahoe City, and my coworker lives down here on the South Shore. So I manage all the North Shore sites, and she manages all the South Shore sites. It takes about 2 hours to drive around the whole lake, so it's lucky that we live in 2 different places because we're basically on call 24/7. The only days we skip monitoring a storm is if it lands on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Each monitoring station is equipped with an ISCO automated sampler. It's in this picture right here. And that machine collects continuous flow measurements. So a level reading is taken every 5 minutes in a flume and converted to a flow rate. It also takes continuous turbidity measurements, also every 5 minutes. Turbidity can be used as a proxy measurement for FSP using a conversion equation that was developed by some local scientists. We also take water quality samples during storm events and have them analyzed for the main pollutants of concern in Tahoe, which are total nitrogen concentration, total phosphorus concentration, total suspended sediment concentration, and particle size distribution. We use the total suspended sediment concentration and the particle size distribution data to calculate total FSP concentration. We then use concentrations and flow volumes to calculate total pollutant loading from each urban catchment that we monitor to verify that all the actions we're taking to reduce loading to the lake are actually having the intended effect. While we are most interested in FSP from a clarity perspective, we are also interested in nitrogen and phosphorus because they feed algal blooms in the near shore. This is a lot of data to collect, manage, analyze, and report. So Tahoe RCD, in cooperation with some technologically savvy partners, has developed some 21st century ways to do this efficiently. So out in the field, we use 2 different apps. We use Survey 123 by ArcGIS and LoggerLink. Keeping track of precipitation types is really important, and Survey 123 allows us to enter what type of precipitation we're having anywhere we are. So for example, if it starts raining or it turns from rain to snow while we're out in the field, we can easily record that on our phone through this app. Before, we'd have to remember to write it down on a piece of paper when we got back to our desk, and then at the end of the year, we'd input all the handwritten information into an Excel spreadsheet. So I'm talking, this is like 15 years ago. This app automatically puts everything we need in the database. LoggerLink is the key to managing all our sampling sites remotely. So we can check on the sampling machines and control the programs. They're running straight from our phones in the comfort of our own homes. So each site is equipped with a data logger and a modem so that it transfers everything through the cell system. And this saves a ton of time because we've eliminated the need to drive around to each sampling site during a storm to check on the status and adjust the programming of the sampler. This is especially helpful after hours or on weekends and holidays. But the bulk of our workload occurs after a storm has ended. So we used to have to visit each site, collect all the sample bottles, offload the data from the machine with a handheld device, go back to the office, upload the data onto our computers, translate it into an Excel spreadsheet, and do all the necessary calculations. While we still have to visit the sites to collect sample bottles, we now go to a website called Acuity, and the data is already there in graphic and tabular form. This helps us identify problems at the site quickly and skips tons of steps where data could get lost or translated incorrectly. So this is an example of the data we see on Acuity. So we have daily cumulative precipitation, continuous turbidity, and continuous flow, and these dark green squares are where samples were taken on the hydrograph. Finally, we need to analyze and report our data. So we used to spend dozens of hours reformatting the raw data, analyzing the raw data, and finally making pretty charts and tables to report the results of our monitoring. Now we just upload all the raw data into a data management system, or DMS, and it automatically creates charts and tables according to pre-programmed analytic routines, reducing our effort, reducing errors, and providing consistent reporting across sites and from year to year. We report on annual status for each site shown here. So the top graph shows monthly, the top graph shows monthly load and monthly flow volume at a particular site, and the bottom graph here shows daily flows and loads for each event we sampled that year at the same site. We have other graphs associated with each site, but I just wanted to give you two examples. We also report on trends, as shown here. So these three graphs show FSP, total nitrogen, and total phosphorus trends at the particular site over the last 6 years. And even though it looks like FSP and phosphorus are decreasing, here, this one and this one, unfortunately, none of these trends are showing a statistically significant decrease. But 6 years is not really long enough to realize a significant trend, so hopefully we'll see something statistically significant in the coming years. So the apps, Acuity, and the DMS have dramatically decreased the time it takes us to perform routine tasks, improved the efficiency of our program, and resulted in very consistent and understandable reporting outputs. Finally, at the end of each year, we submit a comprehensive status and trends report to the 2 regulatory agencies on behalf of the 7 jurisdictions in the Tahoe Basin that are responsible for implementing the Lake Tahoe TMDL. This is about a 100-page report that summarizes all the monitoring data from all the sites and reports on whether pollutant loading is increasing, decreasing, or staying stable in each urban catchment that we monitor. We've done this work since 2014, so at this point we have 6 of these reports, and they're all on our website, tahoercd.org, if anyone is interested. We have also worked with all 7 jurisdictions to design a stormwater program results chain. I don't know how familiar any of you are with results chains, but they provide common organizing points around which to track, evaluate, and report benefits of programs. So basic results chains define inputs, outputs, and outcomes. So when explaining a results chain, we start over here on the right side with outcomes. So outcomes are the quantifiable goals that are accepted as the program end results. They're the long-term indicators of success. So, for example, the annual average SECI depth of 100 feet is an outcome for the stormwater program. The yellow boxes over here are inputs, and inputs are the resources and actions or strategies that are used to implement programs. So they would include treating stormwater runoff, sweeping the roads to pick up sediment, and infiltrating runoff on site. They also include the dollars spent and the number of projects implemented. These blue boxes are the outputs, and outputs are the benefits or value arising from the work done. And they provide a bridge between the inputs and the desired outcomes. So for example, FSP load reduction and volume of stormwater infiltrated are outputs that result from implementing stormwater projects and affect the desired outcome of increased SECI depth. These results chains can be used to assess the effectiveness of our actions toward achieving our ultimate goal of restoring lake clarity to 100 feet. Once a comprehensive results chain-based program assessment process is in place, resource managers can use the structure to communicate high-level program summaries that are simple and meaningful to politicians, regulatory agencies, land management agencies, local jurisdictions, and the public. So for instance, here we have a high-level summary of inputs, outputs, and outcomes for the stormwater program. So the input would be, we swept 51,000 miles of streets, installed infiltration structures on 400 private parcels, and constructed 10 new treatment and infiltration basins. And this resulted in preventing 260,000 pounds of fine sediment particles from entering our urban stormwater, which resulted in Lake Tahoe clarity decline has stabilized over the last 5 years to an average of 65 feet instead of declining further. We are hoping to begin work to integrate this results chain method into an online platform that all agencies in Tahoe use, so everything is automated. And this is something we're looking to get funded now. Lastly, we also attend many kinds of outreach events to educate the public, politicians, and various other stakeholders about the impacts of stormwater on lake clarity. One favorite event pictured here is the annual kickoff meeting of the Lake Tahoe Pipe Keepers Club. And this is a club organized and run by the League to Save Lake Tahoe, which is the same organization responsible for all the Keep Tahoe Blue stickers that some of you may have seen. The pipe keepers are ordinary citizens that adopt a stormwater pipe in their neighborhood and take grab samples of runoff during storm events. And it just adds to our database. Lake Tahoe also hosts an annual summit that's generally attended by senators, congresspeople, and governors of California and Nevada, and sometimes even the president. Obama came once, to keep them apprised of the environmental work we do in the Tahoe Basin and encourage them to continue to support the protection of Lake Tahoe by providing federal and state funding. We also normally have a booth at Earth Day events. We do K-12 education in the classroom and participate in the University of California Davis Science Expo every year, which is a day of science experiments and hands-on activities for middle school children. And with that, I will open it up for questions and answers, although I think that the next presenter is going to come on first if he's here.
Right. Well, thank you, Andrea. A lot of great info there, and I know I have a list of questions for you.
Okay.
Has not joined us, and in light of what's going on nowadays, let's all keep our fingers crossed that everything's okay on his end. So we're going to move right into the Q&A, and I'm opening the chat area now. And once it comes up on your screen, for those who haven't done this, go down to the lower left, and in that little box, type your questions, your comments, and hit enter. And then I'll read these out loud and direct them to Andrea. So we're going to move right into the questions and hold mine toward the end. From Robert Lund from Virginia. Andrea, what is a resource conservation district? Is that a California thing? I ask, as in Virginia we have soil and water conservation districts. Is the emphasis of RCDs different in some way? Were the sources of the, well, let's answer that.
I'll answer those questions because those are all kind of the same first.
Right. Okay, then we'll go on to the different.
Yeah. So resource conservation districts are not only a California thing. They are all over the country. I think the Tahoe RCD is very unique in that it does not deal with agriculture. So resource conservation districts were originally set up to provide a connection between, regulators and the public and agriculture. But since we do not have agriculture in the Tahoe Basin and we are all very concerned with protecting this jewel of the Sierra, the Tahoe Resource Conservation District deals primarily with water quality. We also have a fire adapted communities program because we have a lot of, the threat of fire is pretty high here. We also run an aquatic invasive species program, also related to the lake. So we are a bit different up here in Tahoe. But no, it's not a California thing, and it sounds like the soil and water conservation districts might be more of a traditional conservation district.
They actually,
yeah.
I'll add to this, pretty similar across the country. Districts just have different names. There's some that are still soil conservation districts, some are soil and water, some are natural resource districts. They're just different titles in different states depending on the enabling legislation. But many still work agriculture. Many have added urban forestry. It just really varies on what the local needs are and the local resources. He's got a whole bunch of questions, so let's kind of take this piece by piece as we go along since we do have time.
Okay.
So the next question would be, what are the sources of the unidentified 15% of the SFP, and are there other conservation issues with FSP in addition to water clarity? Let's go with that piece there.
There are other, in addition to water clarity. So the unidentified 15% is just that it was unidentified. I mean, some might, what do we have here? I'm looking at the pie piece slide, which we can't see. 72% is from the urban environment. 9% is just natural from the forested areas. 4% is from stream channel. And oh gosh, this thing, okay, sorry. You know what, this pie piece has the colors wrong. So the 15% is not unidentified. It is from groundwater input.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, sorry. And other conservation issues with FSP in addition to water clarity. You know, FSP clogs up infrastructure, and there really isn't a lot of other problems with FSP that aren't water quality related, because they're so small, those particles, that they're almost, it's almost like they're dissolved in the water. I mean, they do, yeah, no, everything is related to water quality.
Is there, and he asks, what is the impact of the lake ecosystem of that decreased water clarity?
Well, so the clarity of the lake is measured in the mid-lake, and because the clarity is still 65 feet, which is actually remarkable in comparison to most lakes, we do still get plenty of sunlight in the productive areas like the near shore. But the Lake Tahoe is not meant to be very productive, so there isn't a huge impact other than the fact that since it's designated as an outstanding national resource water, it is allowed no degradation, and that is the main reason that we had to develop that Lake Tahoe TMDL. So I can't say that it has a huge impact on fish or algae, which actually we don't want in the lake anyway. So I don't know if I answered that very well, but I
think so. There's one more piece of his question we'll cover, and then we'll move on to the others. Does your RCD have a role in enforcement, or is it solely focused on providing technical data, advice, and support?
It is solely focused on providing technical data, advice, and support. We have no regulatory enforcement power at all.
Okay, and that's very similar to a lot of districts around the country.
There's a
certain number of them that do some level of enforcement. So now we'll move on to Jessica. What's your source of revenue for your programs?
In the past, we have had a federal grant and a state grant. We used those two grants, and they were quite large, about $750,000 each, to set up the whole system and the whole program. But now, once all that has been set up, our primary source of revenue is from the 7 jurisdictions that we serve. So at this point right now, the 7 jurisdictions provide all the money that we have for this program.
All right. And from Victoria, can filters be installed on culverts or pipes? And can you describe the infiltration structures installed on private parcels?
Sure. So we do have a couple places where we've installed really large filtering vaults. So there's too much flow to try to install a filter on a culvert or a pipe. It would just get clogged way too quickly. So we do have a few locations where we have giant vaults with big filter cartridges in them, but they really aren't very effective, to be honest. They are fairly effective if they're perfectly pristine and clean, but a few storms and they're already clogged. So unless you pay the fairly high maintenance costs to maintain them very frequently, they're really not that effective. So what we do instead is try to infiltrate on site with the private parcel infiltration structures that I'll describe in a minute. But for larger, public parcels or non-private runoff, like the runoff that comes off the roads, for instance, we route that as much as possible to large infiltration basins so that the water can just infiltrate as opposed to, running off through a culvert pipe or just straight into the lake. So that is our primary and most effective way of treating the stormwater, is just giant infiltration basins. The amount of land we have doesn't always allow for that, which is why we started trying the filter vaults, but like I said, they're not that effective. So on private parcels, we have a few different things that we do. Along the roof lines, you're required to install drip line trenches. So that's kind of a 6 foot deep trench, like a foot wide and running the length of the roof line, filled with rocks, gravel, so that the rain running off your roof will infiltrate into the ground. We also have a similar system around your driveway, so that the water running off your driveway will infiltrate in place. Those are the two primary mechanisms. There are a few other ones that are smaller, but those are the two primary ones.
All right. I think I heard Derek. He's connected.
Yeah, I want to apologize to everybody. I got my East Coast, West Coast times all screwed up.
Oh, hey, I'm glad it's that and not something to do with the health and safety going on.
No, I'm really sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
But I think
I'm going to let's plan this. We have quite a few more questions for Andrea here. What I'd like to do is let's go ahead and save your presentation for a future webinar, if that's okay. And what we'll do, we're going on less than 20 minutes left. We'll go ahead and finish up the questions with Andrea here, and then you and I can talk later about your presentation in the future, if that's okay with you.
Yep, that's fine.
Great, thank you. Okay, so for Michaela, what is the average cost of an ISCO sampler and the cost to run and maintain it annually?
So it takes about, this is going to sound crazy, but it's about $17,000 to set up each monitoring station. That includes the ISCO sampler, the data logger, the modem, the antenna, all the accessories that you need, a flume in the pipe, all the sensors that you need. So it's quite expensive. And for us to manage and run all these sites, it's about $350,000 a year. It's expensive, but we do, have 12 or 11 monitoring sites and 7 meteorological stations spread across 7 jurisdictions. So it's a fairly large program. That means that each jurisdiction is about $45,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
From Belinda, do you find residents and community members are receptive of stormwater education? Are they willing to make behavior changes or implement natural yard care?
So we are really lucky in the Tahoe Basin. Overall, residents and visitors are, they're all coming for the lake. They're all coming for the beauty of the natural environment here. So yes, I think comparatively, our residents are very receptive to stormwater education. They are really interested in what they can do to maintain the beauty of the lake, because it does support our economy and it supports our whole community. And actually, most of the reason that locals live here is because they are so, committed to the environment and living in a place where they're not surrounded by a city, and they are surrounded by the mountains and the trees and the lake. So everybody, well, I shouldn't say everybody, but I'd say the majority of people are very receptive to anything they can do to support, environmental education. And making behavior changes, yes, some of the private parcel infiltration structures are actually required. Like if you are going to build a new house or do anything on your house, in order to get a construction permit, you have to have all these infiltration features implemented. So it's actually kind of a regulatory requirement. And I'm sure there's some pushback because it costs money, but most people are really willing to help.
That's cool to hear.
Yeah.
From Judy, this sounds like a great program. You said that Lake Tahoe is located in a bowl. Is air particulate matter an issue in the region? And if so, have you determined how it's affecting water clarity?
Yeah, so we do live in a bowl, and particulate matter can be an issue, especially in the late summer. We have a lot of visitors, so we do have a lot of cars, and we also get, the wind blows in particulate matter, especially from the Sacramento region. We also have a lot of fires in the region, so there have been times where it's really, really smoky. So yes, particulate matter from the air is, I wouldn't say it's a huge problem, but UC Davis does do deposition studies, wet and dry deposition studies. So it doesn't comprise a huge percentage of the FSP in the lake, but it is being looked at and studied. So,
all right.
Yeah.
From Luann, what are your tips for success in getting community members to participate? I'd love to hear the best methods you use.
So we do rely fairly heavily on the League to Save Lake Tahoe, which again is that organization that has all the Keep Tahoe Blue stickers. If anyone has been anywhere near here in California, those Keep Tahoe Blue stickers are everywhere, so I assume some of you have seen them. But we do rely heavily on them for community interaction. They're one of our strongest partners. The League to Save Lake Tahoe is one of our strongest partners, and they really engage the community more than we do. I think they're just a very well-recognized and well-established organization. So people, because of those Keep Tahoe Blue stickers, I'm telling you, they get a lot of participation because they're so well-recognized. And I know that they just do community outreach events. They have a huge email list. If you're really interested, I would actually get in touch with them to hear what the best methods they use are. So it's called the League to Save Lake Tahoe.
All right. And what I'm going to do before I move on to the remaining 5 questions here, I'm going to switch to the next slide that has both Andrea and Derek's contacts. So if we don't get to your questions for Andrea, you'll be able to reach her directly. And for those who did want to catch Derek's presentation, again, we'll catch that one in the future, but there's his contact info in the meantime. Let's see, so from Chuck, does street sweeping act to pick up the FSPs since the particles are so small? What type of street sweeping is used? High efficiency vacuum?
Yeah, so street sweeping, picking up those small particles is obviously the hardest particle size to pick up. We have started purchasing, or all the 7 jurisdictions have started purchasing higher efficiency sweepers, and gosh, right now the brand is escaping me. I'm so sorry. But they are high efficiency. They're brand new. We have found that street sweeping is much more effective on a newly paved road because there's not all the cracks and potholes and everything for the fine sediment particles to get stuck in. We have found that sweeping more frequently has really helped. That probably seems obvious. But we have the problem of, in the winter, we put down a lot of road sand for traction abrasives, and those traction abrasives get crushed as the tires drive over them to those very small, fine sediment particles after a while. So the jurisdictions are committed to sweeping pretty soon after they apply those traction abrasives and the storm is over, so we don't let it stay on the ground too long. Shoot, my computer just blacked out. Sorry, give me a second. Why is it not coming back up? Here we go. So street sweeping does pick up fine sediment particles, but not as much as we would like. Like, the efficiency isn't as high as we would like. It doesn't pick up 100% is what I'm trying to say.
All right. And Connie kind of builds on that with how frequently are they swept, but she'd also like to know if there's discharge into the lake from a wastewater treatment plant.
No. So, okay, so I kind of answered how frequently the streets are swept. In dry periods, a minimum of monthly, and then in the winter and after traction abrasive application, it's pretty soon after the roads are dry enough to start picking stuff up. And is there discharge into Lake Tahoe from a wastewater treatment plant? No. So the same researcher from UC Davis in 1968, Charles Goldman, was instrumental in making sure that all wastewater was pumped out of the basin in the 70s. So like in the late 70s, he organized whoever needed to be organized to have all wastewater pumped out of the basin. So it's treated outside of the basin and discharged outside of the basin.
Okay. And then Ashley asks if there's ways you retrofit existing stormwater culvert system besides the endpoint, which you did address.
So some of our, we've tried to come up with innovative new ways. So there is one neighborhood that was retrofitted with perforated stormwater pipes. So instead of, just picking up the stormwater and routing it directly to the lake, they put in perforated pipes. So as it was, draining water from the road and going into these perforated pipes, it could infiltrate semi in place or, through the perforations of those pipes into the ground. And we have seen that particular catchment, urban catchment, has far less runoff than some of our other ones. So that's been really effective. I think that's been one of the most effective things that we've done, was to install perforated pipe.
All right.
Existing stormwater culvert system besides the endpoint. I mean, I have to, and other than that, most of our stuff is at the endpoint.
All right. And then Robert Lund just shares that his earlier questions were because in his region, water quality improvement focuses on the Chesapeake Bay and its productive capability, which has been a major initiative for many years now. I think you caught the street sweeping, his second question there about street sweeping. I think you've captured that pretty well, so we'll move on to, is tourism associated with a lake the principal source of local revenue versus the surrounding mountains and skiing?
I will go back to his earlier question, why street sweeping is so important, and doesn't stormwater from streets go into catchment basins or other BMPs? Yes, it does go into catchment basins or other BMPs to help treat it, but we have so much sediment on our roads, especially when we have to put down all those traction abrasives, that the street sweeping is important, because if we didn't do that, all our infrastructure would just get so clogged with sediment. So that's why that's one of the reasons street sweeping is so important. Because it's more than just the natural source of sediment. We do lay down a lot of traction abrasives in the winter when it's snowy. And then tourism associated with the lake, the principal source of local revenue. So yes, tourism is absolutely the principal source of local revenue, but it has to do with the surrounding mountains and skiing. So in the winter, all the tourists come up to ski. In the summer, all the tourists come up to, hike or boat or whatever, enjoy the mountains. So those are one and the same.
All right. And then let's see if we can catch these last two, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. From
Okay.
Robert again. How effective is enforcement by the counties on both sides of the lake? I'm thinking about things like silt fences at construction sites and maintenance of BMPs.
So, so we actually have something called the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency here. It's a bi-state planning agency, so it covers the entire basin, bi-state meaning California and Nevada. And our regulatory requirements for construction here are super strict. It's not the counties that enforce this, it's the permits that are issued by the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. They kind of overtake the county rules for construction, and like silt fences and the maintenance of the BMPs, it's all really very enforced, I would say, by fines and whatnot. And like I said, people are really interested in protecting this lake. I mean, I'm sure there's some renegades that don't care, but overall, people really are concerned here, because the lake is the reason people come. I mean, sure, the mountains for skiing in the winter, but the summer is much more. There's more tourists in the summer than there are in the winter.
It's the real jewel. All right, and we'll take this last one from Robert. All wastewater pumped out of the basin, were old septic systems forced to connect to a wastewater collection point?
Yeah, we're not. There are no septic systems allowed at all. All wastewater is pumped out.
Wow. Awesome
Yeah.
questions, and it looks like a number of them are saying great presentation and wow and thanks, and I will agree with that 100%.
Thank you.
I'm going to move on to our closing. And while that's coming up, thank you very much, Andrea. And Derek, no worries. We will catch you down the road here. So that happens, and again, it's just good to know that you and your family are okay here. And for our participants, just the usual reminder here, if you'll check out our website for additional resources on urban and community conservation. And we have our ongoing Facebook page where we're consistently posting information about what's happening around the country, around the world, just things that are a bit interesting. And if you have something you'd like to have posted, just send me a quick email with a one-line and a photo, and we'll post that for you. We've also recently added a new group under that, an Urban Agriculture Conservation Group. So if anybody would like to join that, go to this page, and there's a way to connect there. And then finally, next month, I invite you all to join us back on June 18th for a presentation on Land Management Certification Program with the Waldo SWCD in Maine. This is one we were going to do, I think,